Hello everyone. In this video we are going to create a simple BMI calculator, the body mass index calculator. This is how it looks like, and if we put the height in centimeter, let's use on 75 maybe, and put a random weight in kilogram of course, and click this calculate BMI. It is going to calculate the BMI and then put a comment that you are overweight. Now we can reduce the value to normal. Now it shows that you are healthy, and even if we reduce it even more, now this is underweight. And if we put any of this field blank, then it is going to show us an alert telling that please fill out the input fields. So this is pretty simple, but the UI here is kind of tricky. So without any further ado, let's get started with this. In here I have opened up the folder with Visual Studio Code, and with the Firefox I have also opened the live server. So let's create the markup first. I will just create a container div, and inside this container let's create a div named box, and inside this box let's put a title for the calculator, BMI Calculator. So after that let's create another div giving it a class name of content maybe. Now we need two input field. The first one will be for the height and the second one will be for the weight. So let's create a div and give this ID of class of input so that we can style it separately. Let's add a label for height. We actually don't need to apply this for value here. This is not mandatory. Height, it should be in the centimeter unit. After the label, let's add the input field, and we actually need to give this an ID. So let's give this ID of height, and the type will be number because this is height, right? So we can just copy this input field and paste it. So the second one will be for weight. It is also going to be the number, and let's give this ID of weight. Sorry, the spelling is wrong. And this is going to be the weight, and it should be in the kilogram unit. So we got our two input fields. Let's save, and this is how it looks like. Now we also need to add a submit button here. So let's just add a button with some ID. We actually need to put ID here because we need to grab this by the JavaScript. So we're going to use that ID to do that. So let's give this ID of calculate, and inside it let's put a text calculate BMI. So after the button, let's create a div to showcase the result here, and I will give this a class of result, and inside it let's use a paragraph text, and it will be your BMI is, then there will be the value of that. So let's create a div with the ID of result. We are going to push the result by the JavaScript, but for now let's put a demo data here, or we can just keep it like 0 0. After the calculation is done, it is going to change this value here. After that, let's put a paragraph tag with the class of comment maybe, and let's put a demo data comment. Okay, the markup is done. Now let's move on to the style.css and do some stylings, and I already added the link of the style sheet in here. Now I have also imported a font named Nunito, and I have imported it from the Google font. So let's remove any default padding and margin. So let's use padding 0 margin also 0, and box sizing border box. Now the default margin and padding is gone. Now let's target the body here, give this a minimum height of 100 viewport height, also a background color, background image. I have already included an image here. URL, it should be bg.png. Here this is the image. Background size will be cover. Let's save. Okay, fine. Now I want to put this font family here with the body. Now we don't need that anymore. Now we have got this container div which is containing all of these things. So let's target the container div here, and we can make it center by giving this a position of absolute, and from left let's push it to 50%, and from top also 50%, and translate -50% -50%. Let's save, and now it is properly at the center. Now let's target the box here. The box is this thing, so I think we are going to use this box to create the glass morphism effect here. So let's give this a minimum height of 400 pixels. Let's give this a background color to FA hexagonal color code. Now let's give this a border radius to make the corners rounded at 8 pixels. This is how it looks like. Fine. So after that we want the text to be aligned at the center. Now we can give this a position of relative because we are going to use a pseudo element to create the class morphism effect. So let's create this pseudo element of before, and we are going to make this content of course blank, then position will be absolute in order to position this relatively to this parent element of this box, which is this one. Now in this case we want the height to be 110%, and the height will be the same 110%. So we are going to do this to make it 10% bigger than this box element. Now we can push it to the left by -5%. That means this 10% extra will be divided in at the left of 5% and at the right of 5%. Okay, so we also need to add the top of -5% as well. We cannot see it, so in order to see that we need to give this a background color here, and we are going to use the RGBA color of the white with some opacity. So in order to create the white color with RGBA, it will be 255, and let's give this opacity of 0.3. Now we can see this. So this is the one. Okay, we need to position it. Okay, it's done. Now let's give this a box shadow. I will just copy the values here. I have got this value from the Figma because I have designed it before in the Figma. Now after applying the box shadow, we also need to apply a border radius to make the corners rounded, right? So I'll just give this a value of 60 pixels. Now the corners are rounded. Now let's put a z index of -1 so that it goes behind the box here, just to be sure. Now let's target the elements inside here. So at first I will target the ASON. Let's make the font weight to be bold, font size of 36 pixels and little bit of padding of 30 pixels from top and bottom, but from left and right it should be 0 because it doesn't actually matter here. Now let's target the content div and I will add a padding here. So in this case the content div actually containing the button input fields, okay, button and the input fields. So we are just going to add some padding at left and right. So let's do that. From top and bottom let's use 0, but from left and right 40 pixels. It is now invisible, we cannot see any effect here, but whenever we are going to style the button here we can see the effect in that case. Now let's target the input div and we want the background to be totally white, triple F. Now after that let's also give this a box shadow. Again I'll just copy the value and paste it here. So after that let's give this a border radius to make the corners rounded for the input fields. So let's use 28 pixels, and also we want to add some padding at the top and bottom, but from left and right let's use 0. Now we can see this. Let's also add a margin at the bottom to create some gap with the result here. Let's use 20 pixels. Now it has some gap. Now let's target the input label and the input field. So it has a class of input, then we need to target the label. Now by default the label and the input fields are inline element, that's why they are appearing in the same line. But if we make the display to be block, now they should appear in the separate line, and that's what we want here. Now let's increase or decrease the font size a little bit. Increase. Let's see to increase the font weight as well to 600, and let's make the color to totally black here. Now let's also add a margin bottom to create some gap between the label and the input field. So I'll just use 20 pixels maybe. Fine. Now let's target the input field here. So input and input. Now we don't want the outline here, we are going to style it ourselves. So I'll just make the outline none, also the border none. Let's save. It is gone. So after that we are going to apply our own border at the bottom. So on pixels solid, and I got a hexagonal color code 4F7DF9. let's save, and here we go. Now this is currently is not taking the entire height, and we actually don't want them to take the entire height, so let's give this a height of maybe 60%. Now it looks better. Let's make the text align at the center and increase the font size to 28 pixels. Now it is bigger, but the thing is the font family of this one is not similar with this font family. So I'll just copy this font family Nonito and paste it here. So after styling the input field, we can style the button here. It got the ID of calculate. Now we can paste it here to change the font family. Now it is changed. Let's make the color of the text to be totally white, and we also need to give this a background color of this one. Let's make the font size to 16 pixels, and also a border radius to 12 pixels to make the corners rounded. Also we need to apply some padding, and we only want the padding at top and bottom. We don't need any padding at the left and right because we are going to give this height of 100%, and this is where the padding is applicable. We have given this content a padding, right? Now this gap here is for that padding. Now we can make the outline none and also the border none. Now it is gone. Okay, fine. I think it looks okay. Now let's add a hover effect with the button. I just want to change the background color to something like 0044FF. It is kind of dark. We can also add a transition effect. Background 0.2 second is maybe fine. Okay, now let's style this result here. I'll just zoom out. So it got the class name of result, and at first I want to add a padding here of 30 pixels at top and bottom and 20 pixels at left and right. Now let's target the result and the paragraph tag here. So let's make the font weight to be 600, which will make it bold. Then font size 22 pixels. Let's make the color to be totally black, and let's also add a margin bottom of 15 pixels to create some gap between these paragraph tags. Now what do we got here next? Actually I think we should style this differently. We can put it inside an span tag here, so let's do that. I will just use an span tag with the ID of comment maybe. Okay, it looks fine. Result, and this text here got this ID of result. This is in class, right? Or we can make it ID. Let's leave it like class. Actually we cannot do that because we already got a class of result, so let's change it to ID. So it will have a ID of result, and if you're doing this, then make sure that you don't have the ID and class name with the same name. I am very bad with the naming process, that's why I do that sometimes. Okay, let's make the font size to 36 pixels. It will be bigger, and I want the font weight to be 900, like super bold. Let's make the color to this one. Okay, fine. Let's also add a background color of grayish. Yes, we got that. Now let's make the display inline block so that it doesn't take the entire space. Also we need to add a padding here at top and bottom 7 pixels and left and right 20 pixels. Let's also add a border radius to make the corners rounded. I'll just use 55 pixels. Now it looks fine. Also we can use a margin bottom to create some gap with the comment. So let's put a margin bottom of 25 pixels. It looks fine, but I want to style the comment here. So it got the ID of comment. So let's target the comment and change the color to this one. and also let's make it kind of bold. Fine, the markup process is done. Now let's move on to the JavaScript part. So at first we need to get something from here. So the first one we want to get is this button. So whenever we are going to click this button, something is going to happen, right? So this button got this ID of calculate. So let's use a constant maybe, because we don't need to change that constant. I will name it btn document dot get element by id. We can use the get element by id calculate. I think this is the id name, and we are going to add an event listener with this button. So whenever someone is going to click that button, something is going to happen. So let's add a event listener here. The event will be click, and when someone will click that, this callback function will run. Okay, so in this function we need to grab two values from this input field, the height and weight. So the height input field got a id of height, and the weight on got a id of weight. So let's use a variable of let height and document dot get elements by id, or maybe a query selector, which is all the same. So as this is an id, we need to use the hash and height. Let's just copy and paste this. This one should be weight. Fine, now we get the values from the user of the height and weight, but we need to put a simple check in here. So if any of these fields or both of these fields are empty, then nothing will happen. So maybe it will show an alert message to displaying that you need to fill up the input fields before clicking the calculate BMI button. So let's run an if conditional here. If height, which is this variable, is equal to empty, and also so we need to use the or conditional, weight is also equal to blank, then we are just going to show the alert message here. Please fill out the input fields. Okay, and then it is going to return it. Okay, let's save, and nothing's happened. Why? Okay, the reason behind that is I have done a stupid mistake here. So with the query selector, we just only grab the input fields but not its value. So we cannot actually compare the input fields with blank or anything. We need to grab the value by using dot value. Now in here we are going to check that if that value is empty, then it is going to return true, and if any of this is true, then it is going to be run, and if that run, then that means it will show an error, then return the function. Now if we click it, it is going to show us this alert message, please fill out the input fields. But if we put any value in here, the alert is gone. Okay, so this is the first stage of verifying that the input fields are not empty. Now let's get into the calculation. So the calculation for calculate the BMI will be BMI equal to the weight in kilogram. We just need to comment this out first, and it should be divided by height in meter square. Okay, square means it should be multiplied by its own number. That means height in meter into height in meter. So that is the calculation. Now we got the height, but the thing is we got the height in centimeter. Now we need to convert it into a meter, right? So let's change the value of the height by dividing the height with 100. Now the height got the meter value of the centimeter value we have put in here. Now let's create a variable named maybe BMI, and it will be the weight divided by height into height. So we got the value of this BMI, right? So if we try to console.log it, we can do that. Console.log BMI. Let's save, open up the console. Now we can get the value. It is kind of let's use a familiar value here, 75 and 85. Now the thing is we don't need that much of value in here. We can just work with only 2 value after the decimal. So how we can do that? It is very easy. We can just change the value of the BMI to BMI dot to fixed. The to fixed will remove any values outside the number we are going to put. So we just only need 2 values after the decimal point. Now let's do that again. Calculate BMI, and it has removed everything after this 2 decimal point, and that's what we want. Okay, so we got the value. Now we need to display it, right? And we are going to display it in this result. So this is an ID. There's document dot query selector, and as this is an ID, we need to use the hash, and the ID name is result. We want to change the inner HTML of this, and that should be equal to this value here. Now let's save, calculate, and here we get the value. Now we also need to do some checking in here. So for overweight, underweight, normal, obese, and everything like that. So we can run an if else statement in here. So at first I'll just create a variable, maybe a status, and I will put this blank. Now we are going to put the comment inside this variable. Okay, so if let's do the first check in here, BMI is less than 18.5, then the value of the status is going to be underweight. Okay, and let's use the if again. If the BMI is more than or equal to 18.5, which is this value here, and the BMI is, sorry, it should be equal, not plus, and the BMI is less than 25, then the status will be healthy. Okay, we can just make a copy other than typing it again and again. Now this is the second one, healthy. The third one should be above this value, which is 25, and less than 30, and in that case the person will be overweight. And if it is more than 30, then the person is obese. Let's save and run, but it is not actually showing the actual comment here. So what we are going to do is we are going to grab all of this and cut this from here. Let's save. Now it is gone. We just only need to display the comment after we click the BMI, otherwise it don't need to be here. So let's grab that document.query selector, not all, and this got the class name of comment, which is this paragraph tag here, and we want to change the inner HTML of this, so we can use the backticks and paste it here. Now the thing is, we want to change it and we want to put the value of the variable status here. That's why I have used the backticks. We can directly use the value of a variable inside an normal text or HTML in this case. So in order to do that, we need to use the $sign, then curly braces, and inside that we need to put the name of the variable, which in this case is status. Let's click the calculate BMI. You are overweight. Let's reduce it. You are healthy. Let's even more reduce this, and underweight. And now this is obvious. So this is working pretty good. Let's refresh this and remove on value, click the calculate BMI. Now it is going to show us an alert. So this is it, and the project is done. And if you want to see this project, I will add this on the code pen. I will leave the link in the description below. So for more videos like this on, please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.